Wherever you go in Paris, the skyline is dominated by the Eiffel Tower. It was built between 1887 and 1889 and was intended to stand for only 20 years. It's made of 12,000 pieces held together by 2.5 million rivets. When it was complete, the public complained loudly that it was the worst piece of architecture ever put up in steel. Notable figures at the time, including Guy de Maupassant, signed petitions to have it melted down for scrap. You reach the 3 viewing platforms by elevator, or, for the young and the strong, by 1,652 steps, and that only takes you to platform 1. Everyone takes an elevator to the top. The views at various levels are spectacular, and best about an hour before sunset. On a clear day from the highest platform, you can see for 40 miles. The Eiffel Tower rises 1,051 feet above the ground and weighs 7,000 tons. If you go to the highest platform on a windy day, the breeze can blow your beret all the way to Belgium. The Eiffel Tower was saved in 1918 because of its value as a radio transmitter, and since 1957 to send television signals. It's now the best-known monument in France and the symbol of Paris.
After the Eiffel Tower, the most renowned structure in Paris is the Arc de Triomphe. Napoleon ordered L'Étoile and the Arc de Triomphe built in 1806 to honor the Imperial Army. The triumphal arch is emblazoned with statues commemorating his victories at Valmy, Jeanne Maps, Lodi, Pyramides, Arcole, and Rivoli, to name a few. It took 30 years to complete and is now known as the Place Charles de Gaulle. Under the arch, the tomb of the unknown soldier. The eternal flame is rekindled each evening at 6:30. Take the elevator to the museum inside. You can climb the last few steps to the top, 164 feet above the ground, and have a magnificent view of Paris, with all her monuments and each of the avenues spinning off L'Étoile, the star.
You're looking at the most famous 2 miles on Earth, down the Champs-Élysées between 2 triumphal arches. The walk from the Rond Point, or Round Point, to the Étoile is now largely commercial, yet its cafes are filled with Parisians and visitors dawdling over a pastry and a café crème, or sipping a liqueur and practicing the fine Parisian art of people-watching. Until you visit the Louvre, Parisians won't let you leave town. It's not a national treasure. It belongs to the world. Construction of the Louvre Palace took place over 3 centuries, from 1527 to 1827, and it continues today. It's already possible to spend a lifetime studying the extraordinary richness and variety of the collections here. The world's largest temple to art and antiquities. The most famous artifacts here are the Winged Victory and the Venus de Milo. There are other masterpieces of classic sculpture in the Greco-Roman department, and in the Salle des Bijoux, displays of jewelry found near Pompeii. There are departments of Egyptian and Oriental antiquities, sculpture and graphic arts. But the Louvre is most famed for having the largest collection of paintings in the world. The work of Flemish,
Dutch,
German,
English,
Spanish and French masters, Rembrandt,
Hals,
Watteau,
Velázquez,
El Greco,
Le Lorraine,
David,
and Leonardo da Vinci. All visitors come to see this famous lady. The Paris Underground, the metro, is one of the city's marvels. The French are not timid about placing their most valuable art treasures in the Louvre metro station. There are priceless works of art in stone, marble, gold, and bronze, some in display cases, others simply out in the open. There are maps in every station, and they're easy to read. Tourist passes for 2, 4, and 7 days are available and are good for unlimited travel while valid. The Paris cab driver is as individual as the philosopher Hackies of New York. You approach the cabbie at his parking station. He immediately puts a protective hand over the back door. He asks what direction you wish to go. Then he says, "I'm going the other way. Look for another." Many drivers have their dogs riding shotgun in the front seat. The Paris cab driver is proud of the valorous tradition of the taxicab army that defeated the Germans outside Paris in 1914. A General Galliani got an army together and took them in taxis to whip the Germans soundly, protecting Paris. He could be the only man who got all the taxi drivers of Paris to agree to go in the right direction at the same time.
Sunday is the best day to go and sit in the Place de Terre, Turtle Place, in Montmartre. It's very pleasant on warm summer evenings, too. Take a cab.
If you can find a driver who's willing to go in that direction.
Or take the metro to the Montmartre station. There used to be hundreds of windmills on Montmartre, the highest ground in Paris. The Place de Terre lies off a cobblestone street, surrounded by wine shops, street artists, and tourists. Buildings sag on ancient foundations. The whole scene is a stage set. Restaurants and taverns arrange tables outside, and tourists and Parisians alike enjoy the carnival atmosphere.
The Place de Terre is surrounded by artistic restaurants. Chez Eugène, Au Clairon du Chasseur, La Mère Catherine, and others. Artists set up easels in the street. They wear turtleneck sweaters and are artistically unscrubbed. They are a varied group. Some stab at canvases with palette knives and fingers. Others use charcoal or just plain scissors. Many make extra income by drawing portraits on the spot. Wander around the square and take a look at their work before you decide who should draw yours.
Place de Terre is in the shadow of Sacré-Cœur, the Church of the Sacred Heart. It is one of Paris's most famous landmarks. In 1163, Maurice de Sully, Bishop of Paris, vowed to give the city the great cathedral it deserved, and so Notre Dame was built.
Henry IV of England was crowned King of France here in 1438. The coronation of Napoleon and Josephine took place here in 1801, and in 1944, the Te Deum, celebrating the liberation of Paris, was performed in the presence of Charles de Gaulle.
You can climb up a winding staircase to the balconies by the great bell towers for more panoramic views of Paris.
The gargoyles and flying buttresses have been captured in art and photos for centuries. In the fictional Hunchback of Notre Dame, here is where Quasimodo sought sanctuary in the classic story of Beauty and the Gentle Beast.
The square in front of Notre Dame, the Place du Parvis, is the official center of France. This is Kilomètre Zero, the point from which all distances in France are measured.
The Ile Saint-Louis is one of the oldest parts of Paris. On the eastern tip of the island, by the Pont de Sully, is the Quai de la Tournelle. There are views of the Pantheon from the narrow, winding streets on the left bank. At number 15 Quai Tournelle is perhaps the most publicized restaurant in Paris, La Tour d'Argent. La Tour d'Argent is 400 years old. To a Frenchman, a meal is not a meal without wine, and the Tour d'Argent has one of the best wine cellars in France. Stained glass windows honoring sommeliers of the past are made from wine bottle shards. The wine is cradled like a baby and brought to the table, where you have a view of Notre Dame. At the Tour d'Argent, they serve 15 different kinds of duck dishes, including their specialty, pressed duck. Your order will be numbered, yet 2 tables may have the same number if an order calls for only half a duck. It has been said that it's cheaper to eat money than to dine here, but the experience is worth the price.
Turn right into the Rue de l'École to the Sorbonne. Founded in 1253 by Robert de Sorbonne as a theological college for 16 poor students. The Sorbonne quickly overshadowed many of the great universities of Europe in prestige and the quality of education. It has always played a leading role in political and religious disputes. And in 1968, the Sorbonne was the center of student agitation which led to university reform throughout France.
Many of France's publishing houses have offices in this quarter. And there are a lot of hopeful writers polishing French verbs at the tables of cafes.
Wander the area sprinkled with bookshops, movie houses, and student gathering places. Like the Fountain of Saint-Michel, a popular meeting ground. Or stroll the alleyways of the Luxembourg Gardens. There are antique stores and chocolate shops and outdoor markets to explore. The designer boutiques in this area are a bit more trendy than those on the right bank, but no less easy on your pocketbook.
For a look at what the French call military Paris, the Avenue de Suffren, bordering the Champ de Mars, was originally built as a series of market gardens. Later it became a parade ground for the École Militaire, the military school, built at the instigation of Louis XV's favorite, Madame de Pompadour, and completed in 1772. The Hôtel des Invalides was built by Louis XIV as a refuge for disabled soldiers. The facade is majestic, the door magnificent. Louis' equestrian statue over the door is guided by the figures of justice and prudence. On the opposite side, Napoleon is frozen forever in bronze. The slate roofs of the buildings facing the cobbled Cour d'Honneur are surmounted by horses trampling on the attributes of war. The courtyard is lined with bronze cannon and pieces of captured artillery. The Church of Saint-Louis des Invalides is decorated with flags captured from enemy armies. The last trophy of war is the twisted cross of the Third Reich. Behind is the Church of the Dome, where Napoleon's body lies placed in 6 coffins, each inside the other, in a tomb of red porphyry on a green pedestal. The tomb is illuminated by light from the windows of the magnificent dome overhead. Below, just in front of Napoleon's statue, is the tomb of l'Aiglon, the emperor's only son, who was appointed king of Rome before he died of consumption at only 21 years of age. In surrounding chapels are the tombs of Napoleon's brothers, Jerome and Joseph Bonaparte, and of the great French marshals. The Army Museum in the East and West Pavilions houses the world's largest and richest military collections. Colonel Paul Willing of the Army Museum knows more about Napoleon than Josephine did.
At the Musée de l'Armée, we have very many artifacts which belong to Emperor Napoleon I. But I think the principal part of the collection is in this showcase here. And you have here his greatcoat, his famous grey greatcoat, which he wore during all his campaigns all over Europe. The hat you see there was worn by Napoleon in Moscow during the Russian campaign of 1812. The other hat was the one he wore in 1814 during the campaign of France, one of his last campaigns. A famous picture showing Napoleon in the center wearing the uniform of Colonel of the Grenadiers of the Guard. At the top you see this part of the canopy on red velvet embroidered in gold, which was decorating the Cathedral of Notre Dame on the day of Napoleon's coronation on the 2nd of December 1804. Apart from that, there's wallpaper from Napoleon's from the room where he was born in Ajaccio in Corsica, and his handkerchiefs, keys of his private apartments at Tuileries Palace, some of his hunting guns, and also his dispatch cases in which he carried his personal dispatches. And here is a case, a showcase, with 2 pairs of gold inlaid pistols made by Napoleon's personal gunsmith, Boutet, in Versailles. Although Napoleon was not a very elegant horseman in the academic sense of the word, he was a very tough and resistant rider, and he was able to spend something like 10 to 15 hours a day in a saddle. He spent, in fact, many of his years on a horse, covering thousands of miles on horseback from Madrid to Moscow. He had, of course, very many horses. In his imperial stables there were up to 150 horses at one time. And these horses were divided into brigades of 12 horses, which were kept at various distances so that the emperor could easily find a change of horse every 15 miles during his gallops into Prussia, Austria, or Russia. And here you have the Grand Order and the collar, the Grand Collar of the Legion of Honor, which was the greatest, the highest French decoration created by Napoleon himself in 1802. In this showcase right here, you can see the original and genuine death mask of Napoleon I, which was made on the 6th of May, the day after his death, 1821. We have collected about 70,000 items of all periods of military history, mainly French military history, ever since the, shall I almost say, the Roman days, or even prehistoric days, right down to World War II inclusive.
Other ghosts of 20th century artists and writers haunt the cafes of Montparnasse. Chagall, Gauguin, Modigliani, and Whistler all lived and put brush to canvas here. Stravinsky wrote much of his music here, and Ernest Hemingway and Henry Miller found saleable words in the cafes. "14 miles west of Paris, the City of Light, is the most astonishing, the most beautiful monument left by French royalty, the magnificent Chateau of Versailles. The gardens of Versailles, laid out by Lenotre, rank as one of the best examples of classic French landscaping. There are tree-lined alleys and lakes and foamy white fountains. The palace was built by Louis XIV on the grounds of his father's hunting lodge. Building went on for more than 50 years as the court grew ever larger, eventually comprising more than 20,000 members. 30,000 workmen and 6,000 horses were employed in the construction at a cost of 60 million livres. At the time, a livre was worth a pound of silver, and at today's prices would be valued at more than $10 billion.
From the marble courtyard, you see the balcony where the Sun King greeted his noble guests. Inside the grand apartments are a series of 6 rooms where Louis XIV held court. In his bedroom, his deathbed is as it was when he expired before a throng of courtiers in 1715. This was also the bedroom of his son, Louis XV, and grandson, Louis XVI, whose wife was the infamous Marie Antoinette.
In her bedroom, you see the secret door she used to escape before the revolutionary mobs could reach Versailles. Versailles was opened as a museum in the 1830s by Louis Philippe, and restoration has continued, interrupted only by war until the present. A complete tour of the chateau and gardens is impossible to make in just one day, yet the highlights can be seen, including the chapel, all white and gold, the heavily gilded altar, the superbly carved doors. Artisans are still employed restoring its splendor. The throne room with its original candelabras and chandeliers.
The war salon where Louis XIV planned his great campaigns. Versailles was brilliantly designed so that the movements of the king followed the movements of the sun, or vice versa, so that the king would always appear greater than life, surrounded by a halo of light.
Imagine the glorious hall of mirrors lit by thousands of candles and filled with nobles and noblewomen in their sumptuous evening finery. The king seated at the end of the hall, too radiant to behold.
Depending upon the gods of Paris traffic, you'll be able to return from Versailles to Paris well within an hour.
One of the nicest things to do in Paris is to sit on a slow-moving barge and let Paris come to you.
There are many great and small Paris hotels in all price ranges. The Crillon, Lutetia, the Ambassador Concorde, the Maurice, the Georges V, and Plaza Athénée. Yet wherever you stay in Paris, from the internationally famed hotels that show up in the world's society columns to a fifth-floor walk-up, Paris is always romantic.
For Paris is the city of love.
And life.
Nightlife in Paris has its own French style, full of fun and mildly naughty.
Often bizarre, but always performed with panache and high style.
In Place Pigalle, there are quiet bistros where friends become lovers. You'll always remember Paris because it will engrave memories on your mind forever. And your Paris will be different, special to you for your own special reasons.
It may be for food or fashion, art or architecture, history or just for the exuberant joy of this world capital.
We'll be looking for you on the streets of Paris.
You'll love it.
And Paris will love you.
À votre santé!